February 28, 2026. That's the day a conflict that had been simmering for decades finally and violently blew up into open war. It didn't just reshape the Middle East, it sent shockwaves across the entire globe. In this explainer, we're going to break down how all that tension finally ignited, what those chaotic opening days of the war looked like, and how the rest of the world got dragged into the mess almost immediately.
You know, this quote from the National Herald really says it all. For years, a direct war with Iran was the worst-case scenario that was only whispered about in quiet diplomatic circles. And then, almost overnight, it wasn't a scenario anymore. It was the breaking news headline on every single screen. The unthinkable had arrived.
And right away, the first global consequence hit, and it was catastrophic. The Strait of Hormuz, think of it as the jugular vein of the world's energy supply, was shut down, completely sealed off. Instantly, this stopped being just a regional fight, it became a global economic siege.
So how in the world did it come to this? I mean, an explosion of this magnitude doesn't just happen out of the blue. This was a slow burn, a series of calculated moves and escalations that just kept pushing the region closer and closer to the edge, until finally, there was no turning back.
The story really unfolds in the final 14 months. It all kicked off in late 2024 when the UN confirmed a major red line had been crossed. Iran's uranium enrichment was getting dangerously close to weapons grade. And that, right there, set off all the alarm bells. A month later, reports of new long-range missiles showed they weren't just experimenting, they were building capability. You can see the response building from there. By early 2026, the US had amassed its biggest military force in the region in over a decade. Diplomacy crumbled under that pressure, and, well, the stage was set.
So the first move in this war was a massive, coordinated air assault by the United States and Israel. It was called Operation Epic Fury, and its main goal was brutally simple: to decapitate the Iranian regime.
On February 28th, the operation was a go. We're talking about one of the largest, most complex air assaults in modern history. The entire strategy was about overwhelming force, to cripple Iran's ability to even fight back before the war could truly get started.
And on that primary objective, they succeeded. The strikes weren't random. They hit a compound where Iran's top leadership was reportedly meeting. Just one day later, the world found out how successful they'd been when Iranian state media made a jaw-dropping announcement. The supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was dead. The head of the regime was gone.
But make no mistake, this was about way more than just the leadership. I mean, look at the scope of these targets. They simultaneously hit the Natanz nuclear facility, key Revolutionary Guard bases, missile silos, command and control centers. This was an attempt at a total system collapse, taking out the brain, the muscles, and the nervous system of Iran's military all at once.
The immediate human cost inside Iran was just devastating. Initial reports were talking about over 1,500 people killed in just the first 3 days, a mix of military personnel and, of course, civilians caught in the crossfire. But if the goal was to shock Iran into submission, it did the exact opposite.
Yeah, Iran was not knocked out, not even close. Instead, what happened next turned a targeted strike into a regional inferno. Tehran's retaliation was fast, it was furious, and it was aimed at every single American ally and asset they could reach.
I mean, the sheer scale of Iran's response was just unprecedented. This wasn't just a counterattack on Israel. No, this was an all-out assault across the entire region. Just look at the targets: U.S. bases in Kuwait and Bahrain, commercial hubs like airports in the UAE, even British military bases all the way over in Cyprus. Tehran was sending a very clear message: absolutely no one and nowhere is safe. The entire Middle East was now a war zone.
So with the region in flames and the Strait of Hormuz completely sealed off, the conflict's shockwaves immediately went global. And this created two massive crises at the exact same time, one economic and one military.
Okay, let's start with the economic shock. It all boils down to this one narrow stretch of water, the Strait of Hormuz. To really get its importance, you have to understand that it is the single choke point where a huge portion of the world's oil and natural gas has to pass through to get to global markets.
And the numbers here are just staggering. A full 20% of all oil consumed on the entire planet and a quarter of the world's liquefied natural gas flows through that one single choke point. So when Iran's Revolutionary Guard declared no ship is allowed to pass, they weren't just making a military threat, they were effectively holding the entire global economy hostage.
And the market reaction? It was instant panic. Brent crude oil, which is the global benchmark, shot up over 10% in just a couple of days. And that was just the beginning. Analysts immediately started warning that prices could blast past $100, maybe even $120 a barrel, a spike that would be severe enough to trigger a worldwide recession.
At the exact same time this military crisis was unfolding, those sophisticated, multi-billion-dollar air defense shields that were protecting the Gulf states and U.S. bases, the ones everyone thought were nearly impenetrable, well, they were failing, overwhelmed by the sheer number of Iranian attacks.
So why were they failing? It's a classic case of what military folks call asymmetric warfare. Iran knew it couldn't compete on quality, so it decided to compete on quantity. It's kind of like a goalie trying to stop 100 soccer balls all kicked at the same time. It doesn't matter how good the goalie is, some are getting through. By launching this complex wave of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and cheap drones all at once, they created a saturation attack that just swamped the defense systems. There were too many threats from too many directions for the interceptors to handle.
So, in the span of just a few short days, the world was forced to confront a completely new and incredibly dangerous reality, with profound consequences for security and economics everywhere.
So let's just recap where we are, only days into the conflict. You've got a massive power vacuum in an already destabilized Iran. You have a regional war that's expanding by the hour. A global economy is teetering on the brink because of the Hormuz blockade. And maybe most unsettling of all, you have this revelation that the most advanced air defense technology in the world has a critical and now proven vulnerability.
If this conflict has shown us anything, it's that in modern warfare, the unthinkable can become your reality with terrifying speed, and the fallout is always global. The key question now isn't just what happened, but what happens next. Where does the world even go from here?